My name is Maya Reynolds, and the exact second my adopted sister realized I wasn't a charity case she could erase happened at our Thanksgiving table, under a chandelier that cost more than my first foster home, when she lifted her wine glass and said, smiling like a blade, "Let's thank Maya for lying to all of us." Everyone turned to look at me. Turkey steam curled into the air, crystal clear. My mother's eyes widened already, racing to protect the family's image. And Claudia, perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect cruelty, slid a folder across the table like it was dessert. "Proof," she said. "She cheated. She stole. She tricked you into loving her." My hands didn't shake. They went cold, because I recognized that folder. I'd seen it 2 days earlier, stuffed into Claudia's designer tote, when she thought I wasn't watching. She had made a whole little scrapbook of my ruin. And right then, in the silence between my father's slow inhale and my mother's frantic blinking, I understood something that hit deeper than the accusation. Claudia wasn't trying to win. She was trying to reset the world back to a time where I didn't exist in it. I looked at the people who had adopted me, fed me, dressed me, hugged me, and I saw the tiny crack Claudia had been chiseling for years. All she needed was one big swing. So I set my napkin down, stood up, and said, calmly, "Okay, let's do truth." Claudia's smile twitched, because she thought she'd brought receipts. She didn't know I'd brought the whole damn register. When the Whitmores adopted me, the papers said I was 9, but that number never captured what my body already knew. It didn't describe the way my shoulders lived permanently halfway to my ears, like I was always waiting for an adult voice to turn sharp. It didn't describe the instinct I had to count exits in every room, or the way I used to eat, like the food might disappear if I didn't. I came from a messy string of foster homes in New Jersey, then one long year with a kind woman named Mrs. Diaz, who smelled like laundry soap and used to tuck my hair behind my ear like I was worth gentleness. When the Whitmores showed up, Richard Whitmore with his quiet money posture, and Elaine Whitmore with that practiced warmth that rich women wear like perfume when they didn't feel real. Their car was silent. Their clothes didn't wrinkle. Their smiles were controlled. And then there was their daughter, Claudia Whitmore. She was 11, already tall, already pretty, already annoyed. The first time we met, she stood in their foyer marble floors, a staircase that curved like a movie set, and stared at me like I was gum on her shoe. Elaine said, "Claudia, sweetheart, this is Maya. She's going to be part of our family." Claudia didn't smile. She looked at my thrift store sneakers and said, flatly, "So you bought her." Elaine's face froze in that way adults do when they want to pretend a child didn't just say something true and ugly. Richard cleared his throat. Claudia shrugged, eyes never leaving mine. "What? That's what adoption is. Buying a kid." I remember the way my stomach tightened, not because of the word, but because I could tell she meant it, like an insult. Elaine crouched to Claudia's level. "No, adoption is love." Claudia leaned closer, voice low, like she was sharing a secret only I deserved. "You're a project." Then she turned and ran upstairs, barefoot, leaving me standing there with my suitcase. One soft-sided bag with a broken zipper and a folded hoodie that still smelled like Mrs. Diaz. Elaine touched my shoulder gently. "She'll adjust." Richard nodded, like a man who believed time solved everything. But Claudia didn't adjust. She calculated. At first, Claudia's hate was loud. She'd slam doors in my face. She'd forget to tell me dinner was ready. She'd call me Annie like Orphan Annie, with this bright voice that made adults laugh because they thought it was cute. Elaine would scold her, but softly. Richard would frown, but briefly, and then they'd move on. Because the Whitmores moved on from discomfort, like it was bad lighting. I learned the rules fast. Rule 1, don't cause scenes. Rule 2, be grateful. Rule 3, if you bleed, do it quietly. So I became the easiest version of myself. I made my bed like I was in a hotel. I spoke when spoken to. I did my homework at the kitchen island where Elaine could see me and feel good about the adoption whenever she wanted. And I worked. I worked like love was something you could earn with a report card. My first semester at Whitmore Academy, a private school with uniforms and Latin mottos, I placed into honours, math and AP English, even though I still had gaps from foster care. Claudia saw the first A taped to our fridge and went still. Not sad, not jealous, possessive, like my success was stealing oxygen from her. Elaine started saying things like, "Maya is so self-motivated, and Maya has such a bright future, and Maya, Honey, can you show Claudia how you study? At dinner, Richard would ask me about school. Any tests coming up? He'd say, cutting steak with surgeon precision. Yes, sir. A biology quiz Friday. That's great, he'd say. And then he'd look at Claudia. And you? Claudia would twirl past her and say, school's done. Elaine would laugh nervously. Claudia's just spirited. Claudia would kick me under the table. Hard. And when I looked up, eyes watering, she'd smile at me like we were sharing a joke. That was the thing about Claudia. She always wanted to make sure I knew. I can hurt you, and they'll still love me more. But the older we got, the hate changed shape. It got smarter, quieter, and way more dangerous. By sophomore year, Claudia was living like school was an optional background activity. She went to parties that smelled like vodka and money. She had older friends with cars and fake IDs. She posted pictures in short dresses under neon lights, while I sat in my room rewriting essays and watching YouTube videos to fill in everything I'd never learned. Claudia's grades as lied. C's became D's. Elaine started panicking, but in a very Whitmore way, calling tutors, planning interventions, talking about potential, like it was an investment portfolio. Richard got angrier, Peter, and Claudia got meaner, not because she felt guilty, because she could feel the spotlight shifting. It wasn't even that Elaine and Richard loved me more. It was something worse. They were proud of me. They'd adopted a girl from foster care, and she was thriving straight A's, honor society, debate team, at Whitmore charity events. Elaine would hold my hand and say to other wealthy women, Maya is such a blessing. We're so lucky. People would look at me with that soft admiration reserved for inspirational kids, and Claudia would stand beside us, smiling too wide, holding her champagne flute like she wanted to smash it. After one event, some fundraiser with violin music and tiny food, Claudia cornered me in the pantry. Her face was flushed, not from alcohol, but rage. Do you practice being pathetic? She snapped. I blinked. What? The little orphan eyes, the humble voice, the thank you for saving me routine. She mimicked me in a baby tone. Oh, Mrs. Whitmore, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. That's not. Claudia stepped closer. You know why they love you? Because you make them feel like saints. I swallowed. I don't control how they feel. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You control everything. You're a parasite with good grades. I should have screamed. I should have told Elaine. But I didn't. Because part of being adopted into a rich family is learning that you are always one wrong move away from being treated like a guest who overstayed. So I just said quietly, I'm sorry you feel that way. Claudia's eyes went bright. Don't pity me, she whispered. You don't get to be the sad one. That's my role now. Then she walked out like nothing happened. And that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing something that scared me. Claudia didn't just hate me. She hated the version of herself I made visible. Junior year is when Claudia started to change tactics. It happened slowly, like a snake pretending to be a ribbon. One day, she knocked on my door. Actually knocked. Maya, she called. Voice softer. I opened it, suspicious. Claudia stood there, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate, real whipped cream, cinnamon dusted on top. It looked like something from a Christmas commercial. I made this, she said. I stared at her. Why? She shrugged, eyes suddenly shining. Because I've been a jerk. I didn't move. Claudia leaned against my door frame, like we were sisters in a movie. Mum and Dad won't stop nagging me about my grades. And honestly, I'm scared. My chest tightened, because a scared Claudia is something I'd never seen. I don't want to fail, she said. I don't want to disappoint them. I could hear Elaine's voice in my head. Be patient with her. She's adjusting. She's your sister. So, I took the mug. Okay, I said cautiously. Claudia smiled, small, real looking. I was thinking, she said, you're like a genius. Could you help me? I almost laughed, because it was such a performance. But she looked so convincing, and I wanted something I hated myself for wanting. I wanted my sister to love me. Claudia held up a packet of practice exams. SATs are in 8 weeks. If I bomb it, Dad's going to lose his mind. I hesitated. We can make a study plan. Her shoulders sagged in relief. Really? Yeah, I said. We can do 2 hours after school. Weekends too, if you want. Claudia stepped forward and hugged me. It was quick, almost awkward, but the warmth of it hit me like a drug. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my hair. "For everything." I closed my eyes, and a part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, believed her. For the next month, Claudia played the role of a formed sister, like she'd been born for it. She sat at the kitchen island with me, highlighters lined up like soldiers. She asked questions. She took notes. Sometimes, she'd lean her head on my shoulder and sigh dramatically. "This is so hard," she'd whine, and I'd laugh, and she'd laugh back. And for a second, I'd forget to be afraid. Elaine was thrilled. She'd come into the kitchen with a proud smile and say, "Look at my girls." Richard would see us with flashcard stacks and nod like he'd just solved a family crisis with money and a little time. Even Claudia's friends faded away for a while. She stopped going out as much. She stopped posting party pictures. She even showed up to one of my debate tournaments with Elaine, sat in the audience, clapped when I spoke. Afterward, she threw an arm around my shoulders and said, loudly, "That's my sister." People turned and smiled. Elaine teared up, and I, idiot that I am, felt this swell of belonging so strong it almost hurt. That was Claudia's gift. She could make you feel chosen, right before she pulled the floor out. The first crack appeared the night before Claudia's school-hosted charity gala. Whitmore Academy did this. Big annual event. Parents in tuxes, students in fancy dresses, donations for community outreach, photos for brochures. Claudia was supposed to give a short speech as part of the student council. She came to my room around 10 p.m, hair in a messy bun, sweatpants on. "Maya," she whispered urgently. I looked up from my laptop. "What's wrong?" She shut the door behind her. "I'm freaking out." "About the speech?" "No," she said, eyes wide. "About everything." She sat on my bed, hands twisting. "I don't know why I'm like this. I don't know why I can't focus. When I sit down to study, my brain just slides off." I felt a pang of sympathy. That happens to a lot of people. "We can talk to the school counsellor." Claudia shook her head fast. "No, Dad would think I'm broken." My mouth tightened. "Dad already thinks you're careless," I wanted to say. Instead I asked, "What do you need right now?" She inhaled, like she'd been building up to it. "I need you to..." She swallowed. "I need you to do something for me." A warning bell rang in my gut. "What?" I asked slowly. Claudia looked up, eyes shining with tears. "I need you to write my speech," she said. I blinked. "Claudia, I know," she rushed. "It's unethical, whatever, but it's just a speech, and you're good at this." I sat back. "Why can't you write it?" "I can help you outline." Claudia's face crumpled. "Because if I mess up, everyone will see I'm not you." That landed like a punch. "You don't have to be me," I said quietly. Claudia grabbed my hand. "Please, just this once. I'll fix everything after. I'll be better. I swear." I stared at her fingers wrapped around my perfect nails. Expensive ring. And I thought about all the times I'd wanted her kindness. All the times I'd wanted to feel like a real sister, not a charity project. So I said, "Fine, but you practice it. You make it yours." Claudia exhaled like she'd been saved from drowning. She hugged me again, tight this time. "You're the only one who ever helps me," she whispered. And I didn't notice, because I was busy feeling needed, and her phone was angled slightly outward, camera lens facing us. Recording. The gala speech was perfect. Claudia stood at the microphone in a pale blue dress and delivered my words like they were her own blood. She talked about community, gratitude, responsibility. Parents teared up. Students applauded. Elaine beamed. Richard put a hand on Claudia's shoulder afterward and said, "That's my girl." Claudia looked at me across the room and smiled, sweet, grateful. And then, when everyone turned away, her expression shifted, just for a second, like the mask slipped. And what I saw underneath wasn't sisterly love. It was triumph. I went cold, because in that second, I realized something too late. Claudia wasn't asking me to help her succeed. She was collecting proof that I'd break rules for her. She was building a story where I was the dishonest one. And she was patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to tell it. The perfect moment came 2 weeks before the SAT. It was a Tuesday. Rain streaked down the windows of the kitchen. Elaine was at a charity luncheon. Richard was working late. Claudia and I were at the island, The practice tests spread out. She kept messing up simple problems. I tried to stay calm. Okay, slow down. Read the question again. Claudia huffed dramatically. My brain hates me. We can take a break, I offered. No, she said quickly. We can't. I'm doomed. She put her head in her hands, shoulders shaking slightly. I leaned forward. Hey, Claudia. She lifted her face, and there were tears in her eyes. My heart twisted. What is it? Claudia whispered. I overheard Mom. I froze. About what? Claudia's voice wobbled. She was on the phone with Aunt Claire. She said, you're the best thing that ever happened to this family. I swallowed. Claudia, that doesn't mean, she said. Claudia continued, fast, like she needed to get it out, that she wishes she could go back and do Claudia's childhood differently because she wasted time enabling me. My chest tightened. Did Elaine really? Claudia nodded, tears spilling. She's embarrassed by me, Claudia whispered. And you're the proof she can be a good person. She got to save you. My stomach turned, because there was truth there. Not that Elaine didn't love Claudia, but Elaine did love being seen as the kind of woman who saved a foster kid, and Claudia's failures made that shine brighter. Claudia grabbed my wrist. If I fail this test, I'm done. Dad will cut me off. He'll send me to some rehab school. I'll lose everything. I stared at her, torn in half. What are you saying? I asked softly. Claudia wiped her cheeks. I'm saying, I need insurance. What kind of insurance? Her eyes locked in mine. I need the answers. The room went silent in my head. Claudia now. She leaned closer, voice low and urgent. Not like that. Not cheating on the test. But you know people. You're friends with teachers. You're the golden girl. I'm not Maya. She cut in, squeezing my wrist hard enough to hurt. If you love me, you'll help me. My throat tightened. That's not fair. Claudia's face hardened for a split second, then softened again. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just scared. I pulled my hand back slowly. I can help you study, I said carefully. I can help you work through every problem, but I can't get answers. Claudia stared at me. Then she smiled, and the smile didn't reach her eyes. Okay, she said softly. Sure. She gathered her papers neatly, like a good girl. Thanks anyway, she said. Then she walked out, and I didn't realize that okay was Claudia's way of saying, fine, I'll do it without your consent. 2 days later, I got called into the headmaster's office. It was mid-morning. A teacher came to my AP Bio class, leaned down and murmured, Maya, you need to come with me. My stomach dropped. In the office, Headmaster Sloane sat behind his polished desk, with a man I didn't recognize, grey suit, stern face, and next to them, in a chair like she belonged there, sat Claudia. She looked pale, fragile. Elaine was beside her, eyes red. Richard stood near the window, jaw clenched. I stepped in, heart hammering. What's going on? Headmaster Sloane folded his hands. Maya, we have a serious matter. The man in the grey suit nodded. I'm Mr. Dwyer, Academic Integrity Board. My mouth went dry. Headmaster Sloane slid a plastic evidence bag across the desk. Inside it was a folded paper. I recognized the printed layout instantly. An SAT answer key. My vision narrowed. Mr. Dwyer said, this was found in your locker. I blinked, shocked. What? No. Elaine looked at me like she was begging me to say something that made sense. Richard's voice was low. Maya. Claudia sniffed quietly. Headmaster Sloane continued. Additionally, we received an anonymous report that you've been providing unauthorized assistance. My skin went cold. Claudia lifted her eyes to mine watery, innocent. Mr. Dwyer clicked his pen. We also have video. He turned a tablet toward me. It was footage from Claudia's phone, the night she asked me to write her speech. It showed her crying, asking for help. It showed me saying, fine. It showed her hugging me, and then cut. A clip of Claudia sitting at the island while I coached her through practice questions, audio included, my voice saying, okay, if you memorize this trick, you can eliminate 2 options. It looked like tutoring, but they framed it as something else. Me feeding her answers, me manipulating, me cheating. I stared at the screen, horrified. That's not what... I started. Mr. Dwyer held up a hand. Maya, we're not here to debate feelings. We're here to determine whether you violated standards. Richard's voice sharpened. Did you have an answer, key? No, I said. Too fast. Too loud. I didn't. I swear. Elaine whispered. Maya. Claudia dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I didn't want this, she said softly. But I couldn't. I couldn't let you keep doing it. I turned toward her, stunned. Doing what? Claudia's voice trembled. You kept pressuring me. You said if I didn't do what you wanted, you'd tell Mum and Dad I was failing. You said you could get me kicked out of student council. My mouth fell open. Elaine gasped. Claudia, is that true? Richard's face tightened. I looked at my parents, my adoptive parents, waiting for them to laugh. To say, that's ridiculous. But they didn't. They looked uncertain, and that uncertainty hurt more than the accusation, because Claudia had found the one crack she needed, the idea that I was capable of being desperate, the idea that I might do anything to keep being the good investment. Mr. Dwyer leaned forward. Maya, you're suspended from all academic activities pending investigation. My ears rang. Headmaster Sloane said, you'll also need to notify colleges, your early decision applications. Elaine made a choke sound. I felt like I was falling through the floor. Claudia's eyes flicked up to mine, and behind the tears, I saw it. A tiny spark of satisfaction. I turned to Richard, voice shaking. You know me. Richard didn't answer right away. He looked away just for a second, and that was all Claudia needed. The next week was a blur of humiliation. My locker was taped shut. Whispers followed me through hallways. Teachers avoided my eyes. My debate coach, who'd written me a glowing recommendation, stopped responding to emails. At home, Elaine hovered like she wanted to comfort me, but was afraid of looking like she supported dishonesty. Richard got quieter, colder. Claudia stayed in her room, acting traumatized. And I, Maya Reynolds, foster kid turned Whitmore. Daughter felt my place in the house evaporating. The worst part? It wasn't the school. It was the way my own mind started replaying every moment I'd ever messed up, searching for proof that I deserved this. Because when you grow up unwanted, you learn a special kind of self-blame. You learn to assume pain is your fault. So I sat in my room that first night of suspension and stared at the ceiling, thinking, maybe I really am just a project. Maybe Claudia is right. Maybe love here is conditional. Then I heard voices downstairs. Elaine, crying quietly. Richard, low and tense. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Elaine whispered, what if she did it? What if we got fooled? Richard exhaled, sharp. She's been through things. Desperation makes people do stupid stuff. Elaine's voice broke. But she's our daughter. Richard paused, and then he said something that snapped something in me, cleaning horror. She was our choice, not his. Was like a purchase you could return. My hands went numb. I backed away from the stairs, like I'd been burned, and in the dark of my room, I realized I had a decision to make. I could curl up into the old version of myself, the foster kid who stayed quiet, who accepted whatever story adults told about her, or I could do something that felt terrifying and unfamiliar. I could fight, not to be loved, but to be seen. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. First, I wrote down what I knew. 1. The answer key was found in my locker. 2. Claudia had video that made me look guilty. 3. Claudia's story was that I pressured her, so the question wasn't why. The question was how. How did the answer key get into my locker? How did Claudia get evidence that made her look like a victim? And then I remembered something small, stupid, easy to miss. 2 weeks ago, Claudia had borrowed my jacket. She'd asked casually, "Can I wear that? It's cute." It was the first time she'd ever complimented something of mine. I'd been so hungry for closeness that I'd handed it over without thinking. That jacket had my locker key clipped inside the pocket, because Whitmore Academy used these old-fashioned keys, and I always forgot them if I didn't clip them. My throat tightened. If Claudia had my jacket, she had my key, which meant she had access. And if she had access, she didn't need to find anything. She could plant it. I pulled up my phone and scrolled back through messages. There it was. Claudia. "Can I borrow your jacket for the gala rehearsal? I'm cold." "Sure. It's on my chair. Claudia, you're the best. I stared at those words. You're the best. Like she was feeding a dog treats right before she kicked it. Okay, so she had my key, but I needed proof that would convince people who cared more about reputation than reality. People like Richard Whitmore, people like Headmaster Sloan. I needed something undeniable. So I did the one thing foster care teaches you to do well. I became very, very observant. The next morning, I went downstairs like nothing was wrong. Elaine looked up from her coffee, eyes cautious. Good morning, honey. Richard glanced at his tablet, not meeting my gaze. Claudia came in last, wearing a soft sweater and a wounded expression. Morning, she murmured, like the word hurt her. I sat at the island. I want to cooperate, I said calmly. I want to clear this up. Elaine's shoulders sagged with relief. Oh, thank God. Richard finally looked at me. Then tell us the truth. I am, I said. Claudia's eyes flicked toward me sharp. I continued. The answer key wasn't mine. I didn't put it in my locker. I didn't cheat. Claudia's mouth trembled. Maya. Elaine reached for Claudia's hand, protective. That made something in my stomach twist, but I kept my voice steady. I also think we should look at how that answer key got there. Richard's brow furrowed. Are you accusing Claudia? I'm saying someone had access to my locker key, I replied. And Claudia borrowed my jacket, with the key inside. Claudia's face tightened. That's insane. Elaine looked between us, confused. Maya, did you leave your key in your jacket pocket? Yes, I said. I always clip it there. Richard's jaw tightened. Claudia, did you take her key? Claudia's eyes widened, offended. No. Are you serious? I didn't even know it was there. I nodded slowly, like I accepted that answer. But inside, I was already planning, because Claudia had just made her first mistake. She denied knowing the key was there, which meant if I could prove she used it, or even that she knew about it, her story would crack. And I knew something else about Claudia. She couldn't resist bragging. She couldn't resist control. So I needed to get her talking. I needed to bait her into being herself. That afternoon, I texted the one adult at Whitmore Academy, who had always been kind to me, Miss Hartley, the school counsellor. I wrote, I need help. I'm being framed. Please meet me off campus. She replied within 10 minutes. Tell me where. I met her at a coffee shop near campus, where the tables were sticky and the music was too loud. Miss Hartley looked at me carefully. Maya, what's happening? I told her everything, the tutoring, the answer key, the jacket key, Claudia's videos. Miss Hartley listened without interrupting, her eyes narrowing with each detail. When I finished, she said quietly, this isn't just sibling conflict. No, I whispered. This is an execution. Miss Hartley exhaled. Okay, we do this smart. She pulled out a notebook. First, the locker key. If she used it, there might be hallway camera footage near the lockers. Whitmore Academy loved cameras. Not for safety, for liability, Miss Hartley continued. Second, the answer key. Those keys have watermarks and distribution codes. If we can trace where it came from, that helps. My heart pounded. Can we do that? We can request it, she said, but we'll need leverage. I swallowed. What leverage? Miss Hartley's gaze sharpened. The truth, Maya. And the fact that if the school mishandles this, it's a scandal. She was right. Whitmore Academy didn't care about my life, but it cared about its image. I whispered, they'll believe Claudia. Miss Hartley shook her head. Not if we give them something they can't ignore. Then she said something that made my throat tighten. You're not alone in this. I almost cried right there in the coffee shop like a little kid. Instead I nodded, hard. Okay, what do I do? Miss Hartley leaned in. We get evidence, quietly. For the next week, I moved through the house like a ghost with a purpose. Claudia acted like a saint. She'd speak softly, avoid eye contact, sigh dramatically near Elaine. Sometimes I'd catch her on her phone, whispering to a friend. It's just been so traumatic. She'd look up and see me listening, and immediately turn tearful. Elaine ate it up. Richard stayed distant, but I could feel his frustration simmering less at Claudia, more at the mess the family was in. So I stopped trying to convince them with words. Instead, I watched Claudia. I tracked patterns. She always left her phone on the counter when she showered careless because she'd never faced consequences. She always used the same password her birthday, and she always vented to one person, her best friend, Sloane Carter. Sloane was the kind of girl who wore pearls to school and acted like rules were for poor people. If Claudia had a secret, Sloane knew it. So one night, when Claudia left her phone charging on the counter and went upstairs to take a bath, I did something my old foster self would have been too scared to do. I picked it up. My hands were steady. My heart was not. I typed Claudia's birthday. The phone opened. I went straight to messages. I scrolled, and there it was. A text thread with Sloane from the day after the integrity board meeting. Claudia. They bought it. Sloane. Obvious. You're Whitmore. Claudia. Dad. Looked like he wanted to puke. Sloane. Good. Punish him too. Claudia. Now Maya's gonna get yanked off the ivy track. She'll be nothing again. Sloane. Laugh my arse off, orphan reset. Exactly. My vision blurred with rage. But I kept scrolling. Fingers trembling. Sloane. How'd you get the key? Claudia. Jacket pocket. She's so desperate to be loved. She'll hand you the knife. Sloane. Did you plant it yourself? Claudia. Duh. Locker key? Plus answer key. From Max's brother. Sloane. Wait, you got a real answer key? Of course. I'm not an amateur. Sloane. Queen. And I have video of her agreeing to help me. Sloane. You're evil. Claudia. I'm restoring balance. I stopped breathing. This was it. This was everything. Proof she planted it. Proof she got the key. Proof she got the answer key. My hands shook as I took screenshots fast. Methodical. Then I heard a footstep on the stairs. I set the phone down exactly where it had been. I walked away like I belonged. Claudia came into the kitchen 10 seconds later, wrapped in a robe, hair damp. She glanced at her phone, then at me. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't say anything, because Claudia didn't know yet that she'd just handed me the rope. The next day, Miss Hartley arranged a meeting with Headmaster Sloane, framed as a student wellness concern. I walked into his office with my shoulders back, and my evidence saved in 3 places: my phone, a flash drive, and Miss Hartley's email. Headmaster Sloane looked uncomfortable to see me. Maya, he said stiffly, you understand you're suspended. I understand, I replied, calmly. I'm also bringing you information that shows your investigation is being manipulated. His jaw tightened. That's a serious allegation. So is accusing a student of cheating without verifying evidence, Miss Hartley said pleasantly. Headmaster Sloane's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. I placed my phone on his desk and slid it forward. Read, I said. His eyebrows rose at my tone, but he picked up the phone. He scrolled. His face changed as he read Claudia's messages. First confusion, then shock, then something like fear, because he understood what this meant. A Whitmore scandal. At Whitmore Academy, during admission season, Mr. Dwyer was called in, then the IT guy, then, reluctantly, the school's legal counsel. They asked how I got the messages. Miss Hartley answered smoothly. A student in crisis sometimes reveals evidence when trying to confess. The point is not the method. The point is the validity. I didn't add that the student in crisis was Claudia, not me. Whitmore Academy didn't love moral purity. It loved plausible deniability. Within 2 hours, they pulled hallway footage from the locker room. And there she was, Claudia, on a Sunday afternoon when nobody should have been at school, walking toward my locker, using a key, opening it, sliding something inside, then closing it and walking away like she was putting away groceries. Headmaster Sloane's face was grey. Mr. Dwyer's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't decide which legal disaster to focus on first. I sat very still, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something warm behind my ribs. Not joy, not relief, power, because Claudia's story was about to collapse. But I wasn't done, not even close, because the next part wasn't just clearing my name, it was making sure Claudia could never do this to me again. Whitmore Academy moved fast once their own reputation was threatened. My suspension was lifted, pending review. They said they needed to speak with Claudia. They requested Claudia and her parents come in the following morning. Elaine texted me around dinner time. Headmaster Sloane wants to meet with us. Do you know why? I stared at the message for a long moment. I could have told her. I could have dropped the truth like a grenade through the family group chat. But I knew Elaine would panic, try to handle it quietly, and Claudia would wriggle out of consequences by turning everything into a misunderstanding. No, Claudia had played this in shadows, so I was going to drag it into light. I replied, "I'll be there tomorrow." That night, Claudia was unusually quiet. She ate dinner without snark. She barely looked at me, but I could feel her eyes tracking, like she sensed the air changing. After dinner, I walked past her room and heard her whispering into her phone. "No, I don't care. Something's off. She's too calm. Then, if they find out, I'm dead. Then, I'll fix it." My skin prickled. I went to my room and locked the door, and for the first time, I truly understood. Claudia wasn't just a spoilt girl throwing tantrums. Claudia was willing to destroy lives to feel safe, which meant I needed to be smarter than her, because if she thought she was losing, she'd escalate. And Thanksgiving 2 days away was the stage she'd always loved most. The next morning, I sat in Headmaster Sloane's office like a family portrait with rot underneath. Elaine sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap. Richard stood, arms crossed, jaw tight. Claudia sat between them, looking delicate, pale, victimized. And I sat across from them, calm as glass. Headmaster Sloane cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmer," he began. "We've uncovered inconsistencies." Claudia's eyes flicked up. Elaine's breath hitched. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Mr. Dwyer slid a printed still image across the desk. It was Claudia at my locker, key in hand. Claudia's face drained of colour. Elaine stared at the image, confused. "Claudia?" Richard's voice was low. "Explain." Claudia swallowed hard. This is, Headmaster Sloane continued, voice careful. "We also reviewed messages that indicate an answer key was obtained and planted." Claudia's eyes started to move, wild. I held her gaze and said nothing. Elaine's voice shook. "Claudia, tell me this isn't true." Claudia's lips parted, and for a second I saw her scramble her brain, searching for the right lie. Then she burst into tears. Not soft tears, performative sobbing. "I didn't mean to," she wailed. I just felt like nobody loved me anymore." Elaine flinched like she'd been hit. "Oh, honey," Richard cut in, sharp. "Stop. Enough." Claudia's crying stuttered. Richard pointed at the image. "Did you put that answer key in Maya's locker?" Claudia shook her head fast. "No. I mean, yes. But..." Elaine gasped. Claudia cried harder. "I was scared. She's perfect, and I'm nothing and you two." She turned to Elaine, voice breaking. "You look at her like she's your miracle." Elaine's eyes filled. Richard's face stayed stone. Headmaster Sloane said gently, "Claudia, the Academic Integrity Board will need to take action. There may be legal implications due to the procurement of testing materials." Claudia jerked her head up. "Legal?" Mr. Dwyer nodded. "The answer key appears to have been obtained unlawfully." Claudia's gaze snapped to me again, furious, now mask slipping. This was no longer about tears. It was about survival, and I realized in that moment what she would do next. She would try to make me look guilty again. She would claim I forced her. So I leaned forward slightly and said, in a calm voice that carried, "Claudia, don't." She froze, eyes narrowing. Elaine blinked. "Maya?" I continued, voice steady. "Don't try to say, I made you do it. Don't try to twist it. You did this because you wanted me gone." Claudia's nostrils flared. Richard's eyes flicked to me, sharp. Claudia's lips curled, and then she said, softly, venomous enough that the whole room felt colder, "You should have stayed grateful. Silence." Elaine's mouth fell open. Richard's face tightened. Headmaster Sloane looked like he wished he could disappear into his desk. Claudia realized she'd said it out loud. She tried to soften. "I didn't mean..." But it was too late, because now everyone had heard the thing Claudia had always believed, that my place in this family depended on obedience, on gratitude, on staying small. Richard exhaled slowly, like a man watching a bridge collapse. He looked at Claudia and said, quietly, "Get in the car." Elaine whispered, "Richard." Richard didn't look at her. Now, Claudia stood, trembling, eyes burning. As she passed through, she leaned close and hissed, "If you take everything from me, I'll burn you too." I didn't flinch. I whispered back, so only she could hear. You already tried, and you missed. At home, the house felt like a storm cloud. Elaine paced. Richard made phone calls in his office, with the door shut. Claudia locked herself in her room, slamming the door so hard a framed photo in the hallway tilted crooked. I sat in the living room, staring at our family portrait on the wall. Elaine had insisted we take it last year in matching outfits. Perfect smiles. In the photo, Claudia's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, like we were best friends. I looked at that hand and felt sick. Elaine finally sat across from me, eyes swollen. Why didn't you tell me she hated you this much? I laughed once short, bitter. I did, for years. You just didn't hear it because it was inconvenient. Elaine flinched, like I'd slapped her. I tried, she whispered. Did you? I asked softly. Or did you just want us to be a cute story? Elaine's eyes filled. Maya. Richard walked in then, phone in hand, face hard. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, your applications, you can fix it. The school, you're correct, the record. I nodded. He continued, voice tight. I'm sorry. The words sounded unfamiliar coming from him, like he didn't practice them often. I wanted to believe you, he added quietly. But I let doubt in. My throat tightened. Because I'm not your blood. Richard's jaw flexed. Then he said something I didn't expect. No, because I'm an idiot who thought money insulated us from ugliness. He looked toward the stairs where Claudia's room was. She's been ugly for a long time, he said. Elaine whispered, she's our daughter. Richard turned to Elaine, eyes sharp. And Maya isn't? Elaine went still. Richard looked back at me, voice low. You are my daughter. I signed papers. I made promises. And I failed you. My chest hurt. Not because it fixed everything, but because it was the first time Richard Whitmore sounded like a father instead of a CEO. Then he said, Thanksgiving is in 2 days. Elaine nodded weakly. Yes. Richard's eyes narrowed. Our whole family will be here. My parents. Your sister. The board members from the foundation. Elaine's face tightened. We can cancel. Richard shook his head. No. He looked at me. And we're not hiding this. My heart pounded. What do you mean? Richard's voice was cold, controlled. I mean, Claudia doesn't get to quietly destroy you and then retreat behind family privilege. Elaine whispered. Richard, please. Richard cut her off. No. Enough. We keep protecting her. She becomes a monster. Elaine's voice broke. She's already hurting. Richard looked at her like she was missing the point on purpose. So is Maya. Then he turned to me. Do you want to do this publicly? He asked. My hands went cold, because I knew what publicly meant in Whitmore world. It meant humiliation. It meant a permanent social stain. It meant consequences money couldn't erase. I thought about Claudia's words. You should have stayed grateful. I thought about how easily my parents had doubted me. I thought about all the foster kids who get labelled problem the second something goes wrong. And I thought about Claudia being allowed to keep smiling at parties while I lost everything. So I said, quietly, yes. Richard nodded once. Then we do it right, he said. Claudia didn't come out of her room the day before Thanksgiving. Elaine left trays of food outside her door like Claudia was a wounded animal. Claudia didn't eat. She texted Elaine dramatic messages about not being able to breathe and not knowing who she is anymore. Elaine cried. Richard stayed firm. He called a family attorney. He called a private investigator to trace the answer key source. He called the Foundation Board's legal counsel and said there was an internal family matter that might become public. Whitmore-level preparations. Meanwhile, I made my own preparations because I knew Claudia, and Claudia wouldn't accept losing. If she couldn't keep me out of the family, she tried to make me look equally dirty. So I did 2 things. 1, I backed up every screenshot, every video, every email. 2, I recorded every conversation with Claudia from that moment on. Not because I loved being paranoid, because I had learned something crucial. People like Claudia don't stop when you say that's enough. They stop when the world makes stopping expensive. Thanksgiving morning, the Whitmore house transformed into a magazine spread. Caterers arrived. Flowers filled every vase. The table was set with gold-rimmed plates and folded linen napkins shaped like swans. Elaine wore pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Richard wore his calm CEO face. I wore a dark green dress Elaine had picked out for me last year. Family colour, she'd called it. Claudia finally came downstairs around noon. She looked perfect. Soft waves in her hair, natural makeup, a cream sweater that made her look innocent. She moved like she was stepping onto a stage. She approached Elaine first, wrapping her in a hug. "I'm sorry," Claudia whispered, loudly enough for me to hear. Elaine melted immediately. "Oh, sweetheart," Claudia pulled back, eyes shining. "I've been struggling. I've been jealous. I've been awful. I've been awful." Elaine nodded, tears in her eyes. "We'll get you help." Claudia turned to Richard, voice trembling. "Dad." Richard looked at her, unreadable. "Claudia?" She flinched at his tone, then her gaze slid to me, and she walked over slowly, like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Maya," she said softly. I stood still. Claudia reached out and took my hands. Her fingers were warm. Her eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I hate that I hurt you." I stared at her. I knew this performance. It was the same one she'd done in my doorway with the hot chocolate, the same tears, the same softness. She leaned closer, voice barely audible. "If you humiliate me today, I'll make sure you regret it forever." Her eyes stayed sweet as she said it. My stomach went cold. I squeezed her hands once tight enough to remind her I wasn't fragile, and I whispered back, smiling, "Then choose your next move carefully, because I'm not playing alone anymore." Claudia's smile twitched. She released my hands and turned away, still looking like an angel to anyone watching. But I saw it, the rage behind her eyes. And I knew dinner would be warm. By 5 p.m., the house was full. Richard's parents, old money, stiff smiles. Elaine's sister, Claire, sharp eyes, sharper opinions. Board members from the Whitney Foundation. A few family friends with perfectly whitened teeth. The kind of people who thought family values meant, "Don't embarrass us in public." Claudia floated through the room like a hostess, laughing, hugging, offering drinks. If you didn't know what she'd done, you'd think she was the perfect daughter. Elaine kept glancing at Richard, anxious, like she wanted him to call it off. Richard remained calm. He looked at me once and nodded small, steady. I nodded back. When we sat down at the table, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Turkey was carved, wine poured, plates filled. Conversation started with safe topics: travel, charity, the stock market. Then Claudia stood up. She tapped her glass gently. The room quieted. Elaine's hand clenched around her throat. Richard's eyes sharpened. Claudia smiled. "Right. I just wanted to say," she began, voice sweet as honey, "how grateful I am to have family." Polite murmurs of agreement. Claudia continued. "And how thankful I am for second chances." Elaine's breath hitched. Claudia's gaze slid to me. "And tonight," she said, voice softening, "I want to be brave and honest." My skin went cold. She lifted a folder from beside her plate and set it on the table. "Because some of us," Claudia said carefully, "haven't been honest." She opened the folder. She pulled out printed screenshots, cropped, selected, weaponized. She held them up like she was presenting evidence in court. "These are messages," she said, voice trembling with fake courage. "Between me and Maya." My stomach tightened. Elaine whispered, "Claudia." Claudia kept going, eyes shining. "I didn't want to do this, but the truth matters. And Maya," she looked at me like she was heartbroken, "you've been lying to everyone." The room went still. Thoughts paused midair. Claudia slid the first page across the table toward Richard. It was a screenshot of me saying, "Fine, but you practice it. You make it yours." From the speech night, Claudia sniffed. She admitted she'd do unethical things for me. She admitted she'd help me. I stared at her, anger humming under my skin. Claudia pulled out another page, a photo of an SAT prep book with notes in the margins, my handwriting. "She's been feeding me answers," Claudia said, "and when I told her I couldn't do it anymore, she threatened me. She said she'd make sure I failed." Elaine gasped. "Maya." Claudia turned to the room. "I didn't want to ruin Thanksgiving. I didn't want to embarrass anyone." A few people murmured, sympathetically. Claudia's voice cracked. "But I couldn't live with the lies. I couldn't let someone manipulate our family." She looked at Richard. Tears spilling. "Dad," she whispered. "I'm scared." Richard stared at Claudia, face unreadable. Then he looked at me, and I could feel everyone watching, waiting for the adopted girl to either collapse or explode. I set my napkin down. I stood up, and I said, evenly, "Okay, let's do truth." Claudia blinked. Just once. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Claudia's eyes widened. I walked to the center of the table, held my phone up, and said, loud enough for everyone, "Claudia, you planted an answer key in my locker and tried to destroy my future, and I can prove it." Elaine's face went white. "Maya," Claudia laughed, sharp. "You're insane." I nodded calmly. "That's what you're counting on." Then I tapped my screen and cast it to the living room TV because Richard had installed a system for business presentations and I'd learned how to use it. A video filled the screen, grainy hallway footage. Claudia walking toward my locker. Claudia using a key. Claudia opening the locker. Claudia sliding something inside. Claudia walking away. The room made a collective sound like oxygen being sucked out. Elaine's fork clattered onto her plate. Richard's mother whispered, horrified, "Oh my God." Claudia's face went blank. Not sad, not guilty. Blank like she was calculating. I turned to Claudia. "Tell them it's fake." Claudia lunged toward the TV remote, hands shaking. Richard stood up fast, blocking her. "Sit down," he said, voice low and dangerous. Claudia's eyes snapped to him. "Dad." Richard didn't move. "Sit. Down." Claudia froze, then slowly lowered back into her chair. Elaine stared at Claudia like she didn't recognize her. I continued, voice steady. "And if anyone wants to know how she got my locker key," I pulled up the text thread. Screenshots filled the TV screen. Claudia, jacket pocket. "She's so desperate to be loved, she'll hand you the knife." Claudia, locker key plus answer key from Max's brother. Claudia, now Maya's gonna get yanked off the Ivy track. She'll be nothing again. A gasp rippled around the table. Elaine's hand flew to her mouth. "A board member, mister," Kendall whispered. "Jesus." Claudia shot to her feet. "That's private. You stole my phone." I didn't flinch. "You stole my life, dear." Claudia's eyes burned. "You ruined me." I tilted my head. "No, I just stopped letting you write the story." Claudia turned to Elaine, desperate now, tears returning like a faucet. "Mom," she sobbed. "She's lying. She's twisting it. She's always been manipulative." Elaine stood up so fast, her chair scraped. Her voice shook. "Claudia, say you didn't write that." Claudia stared at her, and for the first time, Claudia looked scared. Not of losing my parents' love, of losing her control. Claudia began. Then Richard's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Officers are outside." The room went silent, again different this time, because this wasn't family drama anymore. This was legal. Claudia's head snapped toward the entryway. Two uniformed officers stood there, calm and professional. Behind them was a man in a suit, someone I recognized from Headmaster Sloane's office, Mr. Dwyer, and next to him, another man holding a folder. Richard's attorney. Richard looked at Claudia, voice cold. "The answer key source has been traced," he said, "and the Academy is pressing charges for theft of testing materials and for tampering with evidence." Claudia's mouth fell open. "You can't, Dad. You can't do this to me." Richard's eyes didn't soften. "You did this to yourself," he said. Claudia whirled toward me, shaking. "You think you're so righteous," she spat. "You think you belong here because you got good grades." I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm. "No," I said. "I belong here because you don't get to erase me." Claudia's face twisted. She pointed at me across the table, in front of everyone. "You're a project," she hissed. "You're a trophy. They adopted you so Mum could feel holy." Elaine flinched, like she'd been stabbed. I looked at Elaine, then really looked, and I said something I'd never dared to say out loud, even if that was part of it. "You still chose me, every day, until she scared you, and I'm not going back to being quiet, to make you comfortable." Elaine's eyes filled with tears. Richard's mother whispered, "Oh, Elaine." Claudia laughed, frantic. "This is insane. This is all insane." One of the officers stepped forward gently. "Ma'am," he said, "turn around." Claudia, frozen, her breath hitched, and for the first time in my life, Claudia Whitmore didn't have a script. Her hands trembled as the officer cuffed her. Elaine made a strangled sound, half sob, half gasp. Richard didn't move. Claudia looked at me over her shoulder, eyes wild with hatred, and I held her gaze and said, quietly, so only she could hear, "You wanted me to be nothing again. Congratulations." Claudia blinked, confused. I smiled slightly. "Now you get to learn what nothing actually feels like." The officers led her out. The door closed, and around the Thanksgiving table, in a room full of rich people who'd always treated family like a brand, nobody knew what to say, because the story they loved, saved orphan, perfect family, had just turned into something real, something ugly, something honest. After the police left, no one touched dessert. Elaine disappeared upstairs to cry. Richard's parents left early, stiff hugs, shaken eyes. A few foundation board members quietly excused themselves but murmured, "I'm so sorry," and "Call me." When the house finally emptied, I stood in the kitchen staring at the leftovers. The silence felt massive. Elaine came down around midnight, makeup brushed off, face raw. She stood in the doorway and looked at me like she didn't know if she deserved to speak. "Maya," she whispered. I didn't answer right away. Elaine stepped closer, voice shaking. "I failed you." I swallowed, throat tight. "Yes." Elaine's eyes filled. "I wanted so badly for us to be a success story." I nodded. "I know." Elaine's shoulders sagged. "And Claudia, I kept thinking she'd grow out of it. She grew into it," I said quietly, "because it worked." Elaine flinched. Then she did something I didn't expect. She actually knelt, so she was at my eye level, like I was that 9-year-old girl again in the foyer. And she said, voice breaking, "I'm sorry. You ever felt like you had to earn your place here?" My chest ached. "I did have to," I said. Elaine nodded, tears falling. "Not anymore." Richard came in behind her. Tired, older somehow. He looked at me, then at Elaine, then said, "Claudia will have lawyers, therapists, consequences." Elaine whispered, "She's still our child." Richard's gaze was steady. "And so is Maya." Then he looked at me. "I'm putting it in writing," he said. "Your college fund, your trust, everything. Not because you earned it, because you're family." My throat tightened. I nodded once. Because if I spoke, I'd fall apart. Richard continued, "And Claudia's trust will be frozen until she completes court requirements and a treatment program." Elaine winced, but didn't argue. Richard exhaled slowly. "We're done pretending money makes us decent." He looked at the messy kitchen, the remnants of a perfect holiday, shattered. Then he said quietly, "We start being decent on purpose." The aftermath was messy, like truth always is. Whitmore Academy issued a formal retraction and corrected the record with colleges. My debate coach apologized in a long email that sounded like guilt wrapped in professionalism. Claudia was charged not with some dramatic prison sentence, but with enough legal trouble to shatter her illusion of invincibility. The private investigator traced the answer key to Max's brother, a college kid who'd gotten it through a testing prep scheme. He got charged too. People whispered. Of course they did, but the whisper changed. It wasn't Maya cheated. It was Claudia Whitmore is insane. And for a while, that felt satisfying. Then it just felt sad. Because beneath Claudia's cruelty was a girl who'd been taught her worth was attention. And when attention moved, she set things on fire. Elaine started therapy. Real therapy. Not wellness retreats. Richard started showing up differently. Less image-focused. More present. He came to my college counselor meeting. He asked about my essays. He actually listened. And me? I stopped studying. Like love was a test. I still worked hard because that's who I am. But I stopped doing it to prove I deserved to exist. I did it because I wanted a future that belonged to me, not to anyone's narrative. The last time I saw Claudia was 3 months later, at a court-mandated family session. She sat across from me in a sterile office, wearing a sweater that looked intentionally plain. No designer bay, no perfect hair, just Claudia. Her eyes were rimmed red, but I couldn't tell if it was regret or exhaustion. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, voice flat, "Are you happy now?" I didn't answer with anger. I didn't answer with pity. I answered with truth. "I'm safe now," I said. That's what I wanted. Claudia's jaw tightened. "You took everything." I shook my head slowly. "I took back what was mine," I said. "My name, my future, my place." Claudia swallowed hard. "You were never supposed to be Better. I looked at her and felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not rage, just clarity. That's the problem, I said softly. You thought life was a competition for love. Claudia's eyes flickered. I continued. Love isn't a trophy. And if it is, it's not love. It's a transaction. Elaine started crying quietly. Richard's face tightened. Claudia stared at the floor. And in that quiet room, I realized the real revenge wasn't the cuffs or the scandal. It was that Claudia finally had to face a world where her feelings didn't rewrite reality, where she couldn't erase people to feel secure, where consequences existed. A year later, I opened my acceptance email, sitting at the same kitchen island where Claudia once begged me to save her grades. Early decision. Accepted. I covered my mouth with my hand and laughed and cried at the same time. Elaine ran in, breathless. What? What is it? I turned my laptop toward her. Elaine read it and collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Richard walked in, saw the screen, and his face broke into a smile that was quiet, real. He didn't say, "We did it." He didn't make it about the family. He just walked over, put a hand on my shoulder, and said, "I'm proud of you, Mel. Not proud of the adoption story, not proud of the optics, proud of me." And in that moment, I felt something settle in my bones. I didn't have to earn my place anymore. I didn't have to stay small to keep peace. I didn't have to be grateful in a way that erased my pain. Because real family chosen or blood doesn't demand your silence as the price of belonging. It demands truth, even when truth is ugly, especially then. And if there's one lesson I tattoo into my own heart after everything Claudia tried to do to me, it's this. You can be kind without being convenient. You can love people without letting them destroy you. And you don't owe anyone your disappearance.